Good morning from the Citystead. Check it out, the flowers are starting to pop up. There's just something nice and peaceful about these spring mornings. It's not super hot, it's like in the 50s, probably even a little cooler than that. It's like the perfect weather to be out here working, and you get to listen to some peaceful sounds if you get out here early enough. So the plan today is to tell you a little bit about our cattle panels. I've had a lot of inquiries lately, some questions, so I thought I'd do a little update on how they've been working out. But first we gotta deliver some waters to the kids. How's lunch going?
Great. Thank you. Thanks.
So last year I built them that little table in there, and they've been loving it this year. They've been eating lunch out there on these nice days like today. Super nice. It's like full-on summer now. All right, let's go over to the garden and talk about cattle panels. The last time, in that first video that you guys probably seen, there was 3 cattle panels right here, and as you can see now the garden has expanded. We've put up quite a bit more. Now we have those 3 all in a row. We have this one here, 2 others down that way, and then we also have a A-frame type cattle panel set up. And what else did we do? Oh, we did a tomato alley, which was also some cattle panels, and that's kind of my favorite. I really like tomato alley. And you see this a lot of people are doing this. You just set up some cattle panels on some T-posts all in a straight line, and you can plant stuff on them and use it like a trellis. So I plant tomatoes on these ones. You can see there's 2 of them back to back here, so it gives me a little bit of space. It's like, what did we do last year? 1, 2, I think it was like 16 plants or something in here. It was kind of crowded, but also like they still had enough room to trellis out. It worked out fine. You got some garbage for me? Thanks, bud. So when we originally started the cattle panel trellises, we did 3 of them all in a row here, and we did the 8-foot panels, 2 of them together. And I used a U-nail down at the base into my raised bed frame, and then I just brought them to the top and I tie wrapped them together. Original video, the idea behind putting 8-foot panels here was to give me an extra use out of them. What I want to do is cut my ties in the middle of them where they connect at the top of the peak and bend them the opposite way to make low tunnels. Now you can see right back behind me, whoop, can't see you because of the shade. There is actually one set up around a bed like a low tunnel, and we have put plastic over that and grew some lettuce in it. It was pretty successful. I tried doing one of these other panels, but the results were not very good. I had to travel a little bit for work, and so things didn't get really into motion at the right time, so nothing really ever came of it. But the goal would be to plant the beds on the opposite sides of these trellises and then bend them over, throw some plastic on them, and be able to reuse them for later in the season, growing lettuce, something like that, something like quick, something that we can grow in the winter, kind of cold hardy, inside the bed with the panel acting as a low tunnel. Then when it comes summer, we just unhook it from the side, lift them back toward the middle, tie wrap them back together. So a lot of people were asking how they've been holding up, because they know that we use these little U-nails. That's all they did, 1 1/4 inch U-nail, and the U-nails are pretty nice. Let me pull one out for you. So the U-nails are pretty nice. They have little barbs in the side of them. I don't know if you can see that or not. But it sticks right into the side of the raised bed. It digs in pretty good, and it's once you start going back, it's got those little barbs that hold it from going. So it hasn't come out at all. None of these have had any problems with these U-nails. They hold them in just fine. I haven't added any T-post or anything. I've still used just that, and tie wraps at the top. This is a good one right here. So you can see the tie wrap right here. And we came over here, and this is actually one that broke recently, so I got to replace it. But that's the only thing I've had. I've had a couple tie wraps break, and these ones here are 2 years old, so kind of expected. The tie wraps were already a little old when I used them, but then the newer beds are still good. We haven't replaced any tie wraps on those. You can see this one's got the tie wraps still. And we just did that 3 times. So one at the end, one in the middle, and then one at the other end. 3 times with the tie wraps. And we kind of gave it a little bit of a flat top. It's not super curved right here because we had to bend these panels together, but it still does what it needs to do. And like I said, I want to be able to use it to where I can bend these the opposite way, hook them to the other side of this bed, and try to use them in a low tunnel fashion. So one of the questions we get a ton of is, how wide apart are these beds? Now they all kind of vary depending on what row they are. This row here was kind of designed for these cattle panels, so I had that in mind when I built them. So they're 3.5 feet wide, which gives me plenty of room to walk through, and it gives a perfect size for the height of the panels. Now this is probably the most wonky cattle panel trellis that we have right here. And that bed right there, it's only 2.5 feet in the bottom there, clearance in the aisleway. So this panel bowed out a little bit on me. I couldn't get it flat, I couldn't get it straight when I was doing it. I might have to redo this one eventually because it doesn't look that great. This one is a far better example. It's actually curved really nice at the top and pretty straight down the sides. And it also about 2.5 feet between the 2 beds here. So kind of more narrow than the other one is, which gives us a little more straight upright, height with it. The other one has definitely more of an arch to it. But it works just as well, and basically aisleways were designed for me to just be able to walk through. So you can also see here we have one that is a 6-foot spacing. Now this is the entrance to the entire garden, so that's why it's a little bit wider. And also I used T-post on this one because I really wanted to make sure it stayed upright, didn't kind of lean to one side or not, just because of the amount of foot traffic that would be going through this one. This is a simple setup. You can put your T-post in and you can use a tie wrap. A lot of people get those metal spikes that can go around there. These tie wraps work just as well. You may have to replace them. That's the one downfall, but they're super cheap, and for me they're readily abundant in the auto industry where I work, so I usually have a whole bunch of these just all over the place. And then the other 6-foot arch I have set up is right here, and it is over top of a couple of blueberry bushes, so it just kind of acts as a marker for me to remember, hey, I planted some tiny little blueberry bushes down there. But also we grow like the peas and stuff, the early spring stuff right here because it's close to the greenhouse. So this is kind of like the main area where people are walking about, doing all the work. And then as the summer stuff gets going and it gets warmer, we start planting further out in the garden. So one of the things I set up last year was I actually took 2 of these 8-foot panels and I made a little A-frame out of them. And my idea with this is I'm going to grow some pumpkins on here. Pumpkins like to kind of sprawl out a little bit, and I'm hoping that if I plant one on each corner of this, I can sprawl the climbing vine up here and kind of over top. And any pumpkins that will hang won't hang too far. We'll be able to really easily keep them up so they don't break off the stem. So I've never really grown pumpkins here in the city because we have such a small area. When we grow them, they just take over our entire garden. So this is kind of my experiment to see if I can actually manage to grow some pumpkins here in our little city lot and just maximize some of this space right here. The other thing I have done is build a couple of beds where I put the trellises right over top of the beds, and that is to kind of use the trellis as a guide for climbing vines, and then plant down in below it things that were hot and would bolt. So like my lettuces, lots of greens I'll plant in the middle there, and we'll plant like squash on the side and let the squash climb and grow. And the idea would be that it can shade out some of that sun and allow the greens to grow a little bit longer into the season. So far, using it as a shade has worked pretty well. We grew some tree lettuce in that bed last year, and we got most of it until the groundhog found it and decided it was very tasty. Now here's the last bed that we have, and this is the one that we started doing a major experiment with last year, and I was calling it the vegetable food forest. So the ideal is I have this panel over here and I have a 4-foot by 4-foot bed, and I'm going to try to plant as much as I possibly can in there, and I'm thinking about different layers as I grow. So down low, down here, we'll have a lot of lettuces, radishes, just little things we can stick in there that are low growing. you know, Swiss chard, that kind of thing. Then we'll have tomatoes where we trim the branches off a little bit going up. So they're kind of like a mid-shrub type thing. And then the next layer hopefully would be like an okra, something taller like that. And then on the trellis we will be growing squash, beans, peas, all that kind of stuff. Anything that can vine, we'll be growing it on there, and that'll be kind of like our canopy layer of the food forest. So this is an experiment we started working on last year. We did it late in the year, actually produced some pretty good results for what it was, and this year I really look forward to pushing it out a little bit further and doing a little bit more with it. And I'll be doing more videos on that in the future. But the veggie food forest, basically trying to grow as much food as I can in this 4-foot by 4-foot bed with just a trellis over top of it. So as you can see, we are definitely huge trellis fans here. This has really changed the entire way we garden and changed everything about gardening for us here at the Citystead, because it's given us so much more space to work with, and it's just such a creative way to try to keep growing and growing in a small space, and kind of being able to transform the garden as we go into different seasons to meet our needs a little bit more. And of course, here we are. One of the greatest things we did with the cattle panels is build ourselves this little greenhouse. And this has been phenomenal. This has worked very well for seed starting. We actually grew things in the winter in here. We had a lot of greens growing. So this has really changed a lot of things for our garden. Some of my ideals originally with the cattle panels to be able to make mini greenhouses kind of faded away when I started working on this, trying to make the inside more of an area I could grow. So, you know, there's a lot of things that got me kind of sidetracked on my original project with those. So hopefully this year we can get back on it now that I got the greenhouse entirely set up for growing all year round, seed starting, and all sorts of stuff. If you haven't seen any of the videos on things we've done to this greenhouse, I will link the playlist right here, because I think we did some really cool stuff building different shelves and hugelkultur beds inside of here and just a bunch of different stuff. So, but that's kind of the cattle panel update. I'm still absolutely in love with them. I think the 8-foot panels are a phenomenal way to use the panels. I believe 16s are great. That's what this is made of, but most of my panels are 8-foot panels. It's just, they're so much easier to handle. I like the ideal of being able to make them versatile, and just in general, they're easier for me to get personally on my own. So if you are thinking about building some cattle panel arches and you are trying to find different ways, I would suggest trying to do 2 8-foot panels, or really what you could do is buy one 16-foot panel and cut it in half with some bolt cutters or a grinder or something. I am usually pressed for time. I'm trying to do stuff between, you know, my long hours at work. I get home like close to when stores are closing. So for me, getting the 8-foots, being able to just strap them close, throw them in the car, that's what worked best for me at the time. And a little bit of extra money was more worth my time home with the family and stuff like that. So I was a little bit of a trade-off, but for me it was, you know, worth it in all aspects. So those are some ideas for you, how to use your cattle panels, and, you know, just an update on how I've been using them, how they've been holding up. And that's what a lot of people have been interested in, is are they holding well with just those staples in the ground? And yes, absolutely fine. They really grip into that wood, no problem. They have been really, really good and strong, and we haven't had any problems with any of these panels here, minus, you know, the couple zip ties that pop here and there, but that's not a big deal. All right, guys, remember to be bold and grow bold, and as always, I'll see you in that very next video.